Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. Hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you had a nice week and you're ready for a Friday night stream. So what are we going to talk about? Well, of course, it's the 5th anniversary of Brexit, so I want to share with you some funny clips regarding that. Well, we have to laugh because Brexit is an absolute disaster, and we're still waiting for some Brexiteers to come up with some benefits of Brexit. Apart from, I think there's one, which is VAT on school fees, but you don't hear much from the Brexiteers or the Tories about that. But instead we hear all sorts of things like freedom and sovereignty and wonderful trade deals and taking back control and reduced immigration and stuff like that. So, well, let's start off with our first clip from James O'Brien. He retweeted, or he shared this recording from 2018. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a listen.
We can strip away from the EU laws that we don't like.
For example?
And, well, for me, one of the ones is the plug system.
Pardon?
I know it's not very hugely, but we obviously use free-pin plugs in this country.
Yes.
The EU don't. And so basically it means that our safety aspects are a lot stronger than the generalisation of the EU.
But we're in the EU.
So rather than going... Pardon?
We're in the EU. So you think we have to leave the EU to get 3-pin plugs?
No.
So what did you win then?
Compliancy to British law.
Compliancy to British law?
Yes.
Right.
So when you bring something into this country, it has to comply to the UK.
That's what happens already. That's why we've got 3-pin plugs, you see, and they haven't.
No, because they use plastic rather than metal.
The EU sets the base level above which we are all free to go, as the fact that we have gone proves. Mate, just pause for a minute and think about what you've just done. You've come live on national radio.
Yeah.
You've described yourself as a Brexiteer. You're getting told off by your mum in the background. And when I've asked you what you think you've won, you've said the right to have 3-pin plugs that we already have. You can sort of tell by how many furrows there are in my brow when these clips are recorded. I think I look less furrowed now than I did in the middle of that era. It's hardly surprising, isn't it? I almost had a handprint on my face at one point because I was palming.
So this was one of the better calls. The idea that, we need to leave the European Union in order to have 3-pin plugs, or we need to leave the European Union in order to have higher standards. And as James Bryan rightly pointed out there, the EU set a minimum standard. It's the same when it came to, for example, worker protections. Some people have said, well, if we leave the European Union, we can have stronger worker protections. No, you can have stronger worker protections while being a member of the European Union. What it does is it creates a floor that you shouldn't fall down below. You shouldn't fall below. So the same with safety standards or whatever. You know, there were so many arguments in the run up to the vote and after the vote. There was another one about washing machines. So some guy said, we won't be able to have our washing machines. And then he was asked, do you work in that sector? And he went, no. But he truly believed that it was necessary to leave the European Union in regards to standards on washing machines or something. But once again, whatever the Brexiteers presented as, well, we're going to have a higher standard, that was useless. It was obsolete as an argument because the EU set the minimum standard. You know, when it comes to the 3-pin plug, it has the earth included. So it's actually, I believe it's safer. So it's a higher standard. But the UK obviously had that when it was a member of the European Union. And if you wanted to sell goods into the UK, you had to follow that standard. But that's not something set by the EU. It's something set by the UK. So once again, there was no taking back of sovereignty or taking back control. Oh, my goodness. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. 2016 must have been a very bad year for horse-related injuries. Yes, certainly. A few people kicked in the head, I believe, yes. Well said, Brad. Thanks so much for that. Oh, my goodness. I just want to share with you a few clips. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but we have to celebrate, the 5th anniversary of Brexit. Here is a guy, maybe you've never heard of this guy before. His name is David Frost. He became Lord Frost. Let's hear what he had to say back in 2015 before the referendum. Remember, this is the guy who went to Brussels to sign the withdrawal agreement from the European Union, the oven-ready deal, and then he done such a wonderful job that Boris Johnson made him a lord, so he could be a cabinet minister and then negotiate the TCA, so the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Anyway, let's hear what he had to say back in 2015.
It's the UK's national interest to stay part of the EU. We benefit economically from it very much. I mean, I certainly agree that when we get to the referendum, I hope it is a real debate about everything that Europe offers, and you've mentioned quite a few of those things. I mean, I would add the single market and the single trade policy to that, and although estimates vary about how much wealth the single market generates for the UK since we joined, it's probably in the order of 5, 6, 7, 8% uplift to GDP. For somebody on an average salary, that's about £1,500 a year, and most people think that's worth having. And I think when you put it in those terms, there's a very clear benefit that because we don't see it every day, we've kind of forgotten about it, but it is there, and we'd begin to lose it if we weren't part of it. It's the UK.
So once again, we have to come back to this point of why is this clip, which is so important, why is this clip never replayed to Lord Frost when he appears on the BBC or on ITV or on Sky News or wherever, on GB News, for example? Why is this clip never replayed to him and asked, the minister at the time asked, what do you think of this clip? Do you support what this guy in the clip is saying? Was he correct or was he wrong? Because everything he had said here is correct. The UK benefited greatly from being part of the single market. It added a huge amount to GDP. And it facilitated trade, obviously. So what changed in his mind? Because if you listen to debates now with him, or if you listen to interviews with him, he constantly talks about, well, we're better off outside the European Union. And he sort of goes down this sort of rabbit hole about sovereignty and stuff like that. So he's moved away from economic arguments and he's moved to more intangible ones. Gareth, thank you so much for that super chat. Brexit, Bendy Bananas plugs Happy Fish. Yes, the fish. Do you remember the fish? Jacob Rees-Mogg talking about how they're now British fish and they're happy because of that. So when it came to fish, obviously the fishing communities were courted by the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg, but less so Jacob Rees-Mogg, more Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. Farage in particular visited pretty much every fishing community and convinced them to vote against their own interests, because now they have to, when they want to sell their fish into the single market, there's a mountain of paperwork and of course a mountain of cost, which makes them less competitive. Some fish products have to be consumed within days, and it can take days to get the product shipped to, for example, countries like Spain, Italy, and France. So they're at a disadvantage. Now, when these people voted for this, did they know that this was going to be a problem, or did they just trust Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage? Like, just think about that for a moment. Nigel Farage comes to your town and you're worried about leaving the European Union. You're worried about this referendum. You have a choice. Do I listen to Nigel Farage or do I listen to somebody who works in the trade sector? An expert. But it seems a lot of people decided, I'm going to listen to Nigel Farage. I'm not going to listen to the person who runs the risk of destroying their reputation if they're wrong. Because that's the thing about an expert. An expert, it's in their interest to provide you with the right information. Because if they're wrong, then you're not going to trust them anymore. But for a politician, it's okay to lie because there are no consequences. You just blame somebody else. Or you say, like what's happening with Farage today. He's saying, well, if I had been in charge, it would have been a better Brexit. The good Brexit goes to another school. Oh, my goodness. Brad, once again, thank you so much, Brad. Farage was going to attend the big Brexit anniversary party, but when he heard it was in Clacton, he said he had other commitments. Anywhere but Clacton. Thanks, Brad. It's a joke. You know, these people were lied to by Farage. And then what did they do last year? Let's vote him in with a massive majority. You know, he lied to us. He told us that if we voted to leave the European Union, everything will be wonderful, sunlit uplands and all of that. It hasn't come about. And instead of actually taking a step back and saying, okay, did Nigel Farage lie to us? Should we trust him again? You know, Farage is like that guy in The Simpsons, the episode about the monorail. But the difference with the guy who's selling the monorails is he didn't want to go back to the town where he scammed the people. Farage, on the other side of this, on the contrary, I should say, is happy to go back to these places. So what does that say about Farage, and what does it say about the people who vote for him? Relations are frosty. Lord Dave knew the cost of leaving the EU. Well done, David Frost. Great to see you, Wee Scots Dog. Hope you're well tonight. Farage does the Trump thing. He blames everyone else. Yes, and that's what Farage is doing, of course. Everyone else, it's not my fault. It's the Tories. He's blaming the Tories at the moment. They delivered a bad Brexit, even though I convinced my candidates to stand aside in order for Boris Johnson to win a massive majority and get Brexit over the line. But you knew what the oven-ready deal was going to be. Like, if you didn't know, then whose fault is that? If you got it wrong, then whose fault is that? Because you didn't say that Boris Johnson tricked you. Because then if you said that, then you'd be like showing, oh, well, I was tricked by Boris Johnson. I believed Boris Johnson. I trusted Boris Johnson. Then people would ask, why the hell would you trust Boris Johnson? He's a compulsive pathological liar. Can you be a compulsive and pathological liar? I don't know. Well, Boris Johnson is anyway. Moving on. Just when it comes to Farage, just a quick clip here from Farouk, which is great, well put together.
Not only would we be far better off, we'd be a happier place. The sun has risen on an independent, united kingdom. Brexit has failed. In some ways, we're now even more uncompetitive than we were as members of the European Union. Our democracy feels dead. Our democracy feels dead. I mean, what's not to like? I know you're going to miss us. Not only would we be far better.
There we go. From 2016 to 2024, Brexit going down the toilet there. You know, we'd be better off with Brexit. The sun has risen on an independent UK. Then, just a few years later, Brexit has failed. We were more competitive in the EU and our democracy feels dead. But of course, it's not his fault. It's not his fault that everything went pear-shaped. It's not his fault that he lied to people. He told them everything would be great. And you can hear the Brexit supporter, you can hear Farage supporters saying, no, it's not his fault. He promised sunlit uplands, but it's the Tories that failed. And the Tories, of course, will refuse to abandon Brexit. They will refuse to distance themselves from it because they have invested so much political capital in Brexit. It's beyond ridiculous. Femi also posted this, which is really nice.
Brexit was more traumatic, I think, for this sector than many others.
And I think we're now in that very difficult bit where the costs are obvious.
So you agree with Chris that it is costing?
I think
it's that we are paying the cost of Brexit in our food bills.
I think it has had some cost.
That if you look at small deliveries of things like cheese, you were talking about 71% increase maximum level on the retail price.
But we're losing people from London permanently. They're going to take up residence in other European countries with European citizenship because they can't pursue their careers by staying in London. It's about British citizens taking up citizenship in other countries because their career opportunities are so limited compared to what they were.
So why have we got a significant reduction in trade intensity that stayed low, whereas others have come back?
Yeah, as I said, without a doubt, we're changing our trading relationship with the EU, and that means a different set of controls and things that people will have to do, and that will obviously have an impact, and that I'm sure is a big part of the reason why this has happened.
Would membership of the single market be something that would boost growth and change our current economic outlook?
I think having unfettered trade with our neighbours and countries all over the world is very beneficial to growth.
Vital drugs have not been able to be moved from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. 30 drugs, including cancer drugs. I think about 200 companies have stopped shipping stuff. There's been impediments to the movement of guide dogs, of parcels, of potted plants, of tractor parts.
So it's one disaster after another. And once again, nobody is taking responsibility for this. Where is Boris Johnson? He's actually celebrating Brexit. Where is Nigel Farage? He's celebrating Brexit to a certain extent. It's no one wants to take responsibility for it. And you notice that the Brexiteers are not celebrating. There's a few Conservatives and Reform UK people who are celebrating the day, but they're not presenting the benefits. And as soon as you start talking about Brexit, what is their response? Stop talking about Brexit. Can you imagine back in 1966 when England won the World Cup, if the very next year or a few years after, the biggest supporters, people who are at the game, started saying, stop talking about us winning the World Cup. We won, it's over and done with, move on. You'd be like, well, why would you be saying that? Shouldn't you be celebrating it for the next number of years? Shouldn't you be talking how great it was, how great it made you feel, the benefits to the country, the benefits to England, the benefits to football by winning the World Cup? But no, we're hearing the opposite. It's like, stop talking about Brexit. Stop talking about our wonderful win. Their response is, we won, get over it. But they can't actually present a benefit at all. I vote face huggers for elected officials. I hope you enjoy it. Well, on this side, my face hugger, yes. There's a political angle there, if you can get it. Oh my goodness. One more video on Brexit and then we'll move on, I promise. This is, so here are two Brexiteers, former members of the Brexit Party, Richard Tice and, I forget what his name, Terror Man, celebrating in Lincolnshire.
I mean, the sun's not yet shining. The skies are grey with disappointment on Brexit Day because all the opportunity, it was the right thing to do. This great vote here, the biggest constituency, I think, vote in the whole country. But people are disappointed, Martin, with the Tory government's utter failure to take advantage of this great opportunity. And people here feel they've been betrayed, been let down, because far from taking back control of the borders and reducing immigration, the Tories basically allowed it to explode, to mushroom, which was a complete and utter opposite of what was promised, and people believe them.
Just so people at home understand, what is it about Boston and the area that attracts so many people from places like Lithuania, Poland, Romania? It's a seasonal agricultural work and the factory work, right?
Huge agricultural industry here and across the whole constituency and in Lincolnshire. So yes, we need seasonal agricultural workers, of course, and that's we've always had that, should have always had that. But that's been allowed to mushroom into just a complete explosion. And I'm afraid to say that there's been much illegal immigration here in...
Wait a minute. Wasn't Brexit supposed to end immigration? Wasn't it supposed to bring down the numbers? Wasn't it supposed to end illegal immigration, as he's describing it? Where are the benefits? He keeps talking about it, how it was wonderful, but then a lot of the opportunities were missed because of the Conservatives. What opportunities? Because if you do a bit of digging on this, they will come up with stuff like, well, the opportunities were to take back control, but the UK had control of its borders. People were deported when the UK was a member of the European Union. See, the problem here is freedom of movement has ended. So, of course, you're going to have to bring people in to do jobs that British people can't do or don't want to do. Brexit was a gift from God. But you don't understand how Britain can keep a 3-pin plug. The points... Oh, that's gone. Brexit is great and Longford is real. Ha ha ha. Very, very sly.
in and around Boston, which I think has increased in recent years, a failure of the authorities to to control immigration laws, and that's one of the things that I'm determined to get on top of. So yeah, it's a series of disappointment, really, that this opportunity has not yet been taken advantage of, but it's still there, and frankly, it's only reform that will take advantage of it.
There you go. So we just need for Reform UK to become the biggest party in Parliament, to form the next government, and then they will take advantage of the Brexit benefits. They'll have to find them first, but then when they find them, they'll be able to take advantage of them. Brexiteers complaining about the number of Polish people coming to the UK. Since the UK left the EU, Poland is doing very well, and it may overtake the UK. Yes, that's a very valid point. People should be told that Reform UK running the country will be a lot like Trump is running America. Well, for the people who support Farage, they would love that idea. I'll get to Trump a little bit later in the stream. Absolute nightmare. Does anyone find Reform whinging on and on about migration boring as stupid? Boring as well as stupid? Yes. This is all they have. They're a one-trick pony. All they have is immigration. That's all they have. And they think, okay, this is going to be enough to get them over the line. This is going to win them hundreds of seats in Parliament. But that is not the priority amongst the public. The public's priority, of course, is the cost of living crisis, is the NHS, is infrastructure, schools, stuff like that, education. But the two primary ones are the cost of living and the NHS. And what is Reform offering the public on the cost of living crisis? Nothing. They talked about, okay, we might eliminate a tax band or something like that. When it comes to the NHS, they've said that they would like to give vouchers to people so they can go private. That's fixing the NHS. That would be taking money away from the NHS. They're against the idea of a national health service. Let's just be frank about that. Some people within the party will say one thing and say another. But Farage has not come out with vocal support of the NHS. He keeps talking. He keeps running it down. He's saying that it's bloated, that it's too big, that there are problems with it. It needs to be reformed. It needs to be parts of it need to be privatized, as far as I know. So this is not somebody who cares about the NHS. He's on record in the past of talking about having an American-style healthcare system. Now he talks about a French one. Look, it's not a good idea in general to look at other healthcare systems and say, oh, let's copy that, because every healthcare system is designed or evolves to suit the particulars of that country. For example, if you look at what's happened, you couldn't copy and paste a healthcare system that's in Italy and paste it into the UK, because the requirements of people in Italy are completely different to the ones in the UK. The same with France. You can't just copy and paste the French model. You'd have to move away from the UK one, and that would create a massive amount of disruption. What the NHS needs are two things. It needs staff, which it's crying out for, and it needs funding that doesn't go into the private sector. So this is when the Tories talk about more money for the NHS. Oh, we're spending huge record amounts on the NHS. Where is that money going? Some will say, people on the right will say, oh, it's going into the pockets of these managers. And that can be a problem. But most of the waste is in the private sector. You're paying people, middlemen, who are doing nothing, a huge amount of money, when you could actually hire people with proper contracts. Look at, for example, the typical example people give is cleaning. The cleaning facilities are outsourced. So what's happening is a private company is hiring somebody at minimum wage or even below minimum wage as a contractor, and the private company is taking their slice out of that, and the person who's doing the actual work is getting paid very little, and they have no protections. They're not able to join a union. They're not able to have the protections that they would have if they were working for the NHS. So if you start getting rid of all this outsourcing or these private contracts and private companies, you'll be able to hire people and give them decent wages and decent conditions. It's not just about the wages, it's also the conditions. So that needs to change. But nobody's really talking about that. They're just talking about reforms. But you need to change the visa system, or you need to start really investing in training up doctors. But they're not cheap. They're about £150,000 to train up a GP. That's one GP. So imagine if you want to replace, thousands of GPs who are leaving the profession at the moment and recruit more, you're going to need to spend huge amounts of money. Anyway, guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I'm just going to take a short comedy moment and we'll move on to our next topic. Hope you enjoy this.
The first 2 weeks of Donald Trump's second and possibly final presidential term have seen a flurry of executive orders and proclamations, but also new images released of the first family. What do these official portraits tell us about the residents of the White House? Our fashion, Photoshop and sucking up to the powerful correspondent Jonathan Goodenough has more. Yes, that's right. By now you've probably all seen President Trump's new official portrait with its dramatic low lighting and defiant stare. A portrait of a leader who takes no prisoners. You mean commits war crimes? No, he also looks a bit like a villain in a 90s action film. And you might also notice he's wearing a blue tie, which could be a reference to popular comedy film Zoolander's blue steel, an expression he could be said to be attempting. Or maybe it's just the tie he was wearing that day. I don't think so. Everything in these portraits is very carefully chosen for its symbolic purpose, something that becomes clear if we look at the First Lady's portrait unveiled this week. What's the first thing you notice? Well, it's in black and white. Exactly. It's classic. Striking, so it doesn't have any colour. Yes, just like most of her husband's government. The pose is also distinctive. She's leaning forward, hands on the table. She's wearing a suit. She means business. What business? Business. What exactly that is isn't clear, but we know that whatever the business is, it'll be classy and in black and white. Mostly white. The setting is also important. The Washington Monument looms in the background, and the rhyming of her body with this well-known obelisk is striking. Do you mean she's standing up? The rhyming of her body with this well-known obelisk is striking. Yes. I'll tell you what I think is striking. That image looks very manipulated. Well, she chose to lean on a table, sure. No, I mean everything looks incredibly smooth. That's probably just good lighting. Her skin and hair look unnaturally shiny. Makeup can do wonders. Are you seriously suggesting that there was no post-production on the image, no editing, no Photoshop, no filters? Not that I'm aware of, and even talking about that could get me into trouble. So trouble? With who? With the Trump administration. Are you mad? Did you not get the memo? We don't say stuff like that anymore. They'll, cut off access or set up an investigation or, God forbid, send someone to attack me, then pardon them. That sounds a bit paranoid. Or maybe just prudent. I'm not taking any chances. Which is why my next piece will be on Baron Trump. How does he manage to look so cool and normal? Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as Rachel Reeves prepares to announce a third runway at Heathrow, we ask if she wants to encourage economic growth by committing to a project that won't happen for decades. Couldn't she just say we're going to rejoin the EU?
Oh, yes. That would be, something that's not going to happen. So you might as well just say, let's rejoin the EU. Well said. Okay, guys. This is a little bit concerning. Treasury Minister, lobbyists are huge and important part of government plans. What's this about? So growth comes from business, not from government. That was the message a government minister delivered to hundreds of corporate lobbyists, including those linked to representing banks, arms companies and pharmaceuticals during a webinar this morning. Lord Livermore, the Financial Secretary to the Treasury, made the comments at the online event, which was the first in a series aimed at encouraging lobbyists to play a major role in the government's growth at all costs agenda. In the call, which Open Democracy attended, Livermore was clear that Number 10 sees this agenda as being driven by corporations. Oh, God. Well, the government is a secondary actor that works in partnership with business. Also present among the 700 attendees were lobbyists representing tech firms, energy giants and consultancies, and those working for agencies including Hanbury, Headland, Lexington, Bunswick, Cavendish, and Grayling. I hope Grayling is not related to another Grayling. These people and their clients are a huge and important part of the government's plans, Livermore said, stressing that ministers are really keen to draw on the expertise that exists within your organisations and your clients. He added that the government's focus is on getting rid of stifling regulation that has for far too long held business back and removing barriers to growth that we, in partnership with business, identify. Okay, this is the core I want to focus on. Kevin Ladd, thank you so much for that super chat. Thanks so much for that support. This is really worrying. So the government's focus is on getting rid of stifling regulation that has for too long held business back. Now, when he's talking about stifling regulation, is he talking about, for example, building regulations? Like, for example, the ones that were not enforced or not adhered to when it came to Grenfell. Remember the Grenfell disaster? Was it 2017, 2018? Removing barriers to growth that we in partnership with business identify. What barriers to growth? This is really concerning because we know that regulations are there to protect businesses from other businesses. They're there to protect the consumer from business, and they're there to protect workers from their employers. This is worrying because the government should be saying these are the things we're going to do and help business if necessary, but not be at the beck and call of lobbyists, because their goal is not to provide the government with services or to improve or grow the economy. That's not their goal. Their goal is, of course, to make a profit, to benefit their shareholders. So if their goal is to benefit their shareholders and reduce costs, then how does that align with the government's goals? I'm not saying that business should not be involved, but the one in the driving seat should be the government, not the corporation. Are there lobbyists for homeless people? No, I don't think they were able to get in. Well, good question, Nathan. Have to protect the environment too. Labour doesn't seem to give a shit about that either. This is when it comes to, well said Killer, that when it comes to the third runway at Heathrow, it's going to take years to complete, maybe 20 years. And what's the benefit of it? What is the real advantage in spending at least £14 billion? That's what it's been estimated. I think that was in 2018. The estimate was £14 billion. So it's obviously double that. And you know, when an estimate is made for the cost of something, you can add at least 25%. Growth. What I've said before, the focus should not be growth, because you don't have control over growth. The focus should be on rebuilding public services, should be providing benefits to ordinary people, because it benefits people, obviously, but it also benefits the government, because if they're seen to improve things, then people will vote for them the next time round. Because if you're just funneling money into the pockets of the rich and companies and corporations, ordinary people are not going to see those benefits. So when the next election rolls round, well, people are going to look around and say, well, nothing has improved. But the stock market, but I don't care about the stock market. I'm still relying on a food bank. I can't pay my bills. My children are going to a school that's crumbling. I can't get a GP appointment. That's the problem. If you don't focus on the issues that impact ordinary people, then you're not going to benefit. It's not going to benefit you. Even if you didn't care about voters, you have to do something to convince voters to vote for you. Even if you don't give a crap about poor people. Let's hope that's not the case. You should be focusing on poor people. You should be focusing on people on benefits. You should be focusing on the poor, the disabled, on pensioners. Why can't they spend £14 billion on the poor? Because no one can profit from that. That's the problem. See, if you donate to a political party, you want something in return. And a huge amount of money was donated to the Labour Party before the election. And Obviously, people are coming up now going, okay, we want something in return. Give us a contract, or give us a tax break, or change the rules, or, work with us, invest in some project that we would like to invest in. Gareth, thank you so much for that super chat. Lobbyists, aka whiny wee prick me bastard, bag something. But not repeated. But yes, these are people who are not, once again, the goal of the lobbyist is to improve the situation for their company. What is the goal of that company? To maximize profit and to reduce costs, or to deliver a dividend to the shareholder. Once again, I said the problem is not having business on board. The problem is business in the driving seat. And that seems to be what the situation is here. There was a story that broke before I came on about AstraZeneca were planning to build a plant in England, somewhere in England, I believe. And they pulled out of it because the government were not willing to invest. Now, I don't know the full details of that, but that's not looking good. There was an opportunity to develop a plant there that would benefit society, but we don't know if with these other companies, are they going to benefit society or not? Difference between a lobbyist and a politician: one is hired, the other elected. That's the way it should be, yes. Politicians are supposed to listen to their constituents, not listen to their donors. Ministers talk about smashing the gangs, but real success still resembles stop the boat slogan. What's this about? Several floors up in a nondescript building in central London, rows of analysts are working to make good on the government's promise to smash the gangs. At first glance, this block of offices look like any other type of workspace, which would play home to a tech startup or advertising firm. One more up, that jumped. But the plasma screens pinned to the walls here are showing night vision camera feeds from border force aircraft and maps detailing the routes of small boat crossings. This is one of the government's command centres where officials gather intelligence about the dangerous journey made week in, week out by migrants migrants attempting to get to the UK. This information being brought together here often paints a bleak picture. On the French side, violence around coastal launch points seems to have got worse. Cars have been set on fire and local police officers followed home by those trying to facilitate crossings. The organised smuggling gangs appear to be getting increasingly cavalier with the lives of migrants too, by cramming more people onto the flimsy vessels. So the government is spending huge amounts of money trying to clamp down on this, trying to smash the gangs. But we know the way out of this. We know the solution. The solution is to create safe routes. If you create safe routes, then people don't need to rely on these people smugglers. That's the way to smash the gangs. But instead, what are we hearing? We're hearing about, well, we need to smash the gangs. And it's all over Europe. Right-wing governments in particular are saying, yeah, we need to stop people from crossing. We need to use the military. We need to use the Air Force. We need to use the Coast Guard. We need to push these people back. But if the other side is someplace that they don't want to be, and your side is where they do want to be, then you're not going to be able to push them back. Because what they'll do is they'll get in the next boat and cross the very next day. I don't understand why this is so difficult. I've been trying to understand why Labour don't just create safe routes. Maybe it's because the Tories would say, oh, you're soft on immigration, or you're opening the floodgates. But if you want to stop the gang, you would stop the gang straight away. So I would call the Tories bluff on this. I would challenge them and say, okay, do you want to stop the gangs? Is that your concern? Or is it just to use these people as a political football? So if you did stop, the way to stop the gangs, of course, is to create a safe route. People don't need to spend huge amounts of money. Something like between 3,000 and 5,000 euros just to cross the channel. It's like drugs. If you legalize it, you take away the illicit trade. So if you create a safe route for people to come to the UK, then you're going to eliminate a lot of these boat crossings. Because there'll be no incentive. Why would somebody pay huge amounts of money if you can just turn up at an embassy, or you can arrive at a UN designated office and make a claim there, or start the process? Like we saw it with, will the boats ever stop? They won't stop. Thanks so much, Cavan Lad, for that support there. Will the boats ever stop? They won't stop because there is no other route. If somebody wants to come to the UK, they know that, okay, the only way to get there is by this way. So we saw it, for example, when at the beginning of the war in Ukraine, many refugees came from Ukraine. They were able to travel by safe routes. They were able to travel by plane. They were able to travel by ferry. There was nobody crossing the channel. Why were no Ukrainians crossing the channel? Because it wasn't necessary. There was a safe route for them to arrive in the UK and claim refugee status. That's what you do. Like the alternative, like the response to this is, well, then they'd all come in, but they're all coming in anyway. Like the amount of people who are stopped is very limited, but they're stopped temporarily. You can push certain people back, and then they'll just try again the next day. So the idea that if you create a safe route, then just everyone will come. They won't. The only people who are coming are the people who want to be in the UK. And trying to stop them is not going to work. It hasn't worked. How much money has been wasted on this? How many lives have been lost? Killer France is a way. Does the obligation? Killer France in a way does away with the obligation in. This causes them to go to Ireland and to Ireland, an EU country. I'm not sure I understand that. There are people who are crossing into Ireland and then traveling across the border, but then that's the responsibility of Border Force. The Border Force have to check people who are using the common travel area. Sunak didn't pay them. But it's also, even if you were to pay the French can't stop everyone. You can't stop people who don't want to be in your country. You can't stop them leaving. This is just the reality of the situation. Anyway, moving on. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philip joins Kemi Badenoch in criticising Tory immigration record. Oh my goodness, Chris Philip. The Shadow Home Secretary has doubled down on Kemi Badenoch's criticism of the Conservatives' record on immigration, arguing mistakes were made. Chris Philip, a former Home Office minister, joined the Tory leader in criticising the previous government over immigration after former Home Secretary Priti Patel refused to apologise for the points-based system she introduced. Speaking to Anna Jones on Sky News Breakfast, Mr. Phillips said, "The truth is, as Kemi has said, and as I have said repeatedly, mistakes were made by the previous government. Kemi and I have been completely honest about that. We told the truth. Mistakes were made." What mistakes? Like they keep saying, we made mistakes. What mistakes? They won't say what the mistakes are. Just, yeah, we made mistakes. See, they think this is moving on. Oh, Cahill, thank you so much for that membership too. And it goes to Howard. Thank you. Very kind of you. Thanks so much, Cahill, and hope you're well tonight. They keep thinking that if they just say, oh, yeah, we made a mistake. It's like, if you... I don't know, if you reversed into someone's car with your car and then drove forward and then reversed back into them again and then drove forward and then reversed back in again and then repeated that for about 10 times. And then the person came out and said, what the hell are you doing? And you said, I'm sorry, a mistake was made. You'd be like, what? It wouldn't really wash with most people, would it? If somebody did something like that, you wouldn't be like, hey, that wasn't a mistake. You did it on purpose. In exactly the same way. The Conservatives tried to weaponize immigration. They thought, we can use this against the Labour Party. What we'll do is we'll be the party of low immigration. We won't actually, but we'll convince people that we are, because they have nowhere else to go. And then they realize, oh crap, they do. Reform UK. There's a party who can be more racist than we are, more xenophobic than we are. And that's where those people are going. And now they're trying to backpedal, or they're trying to find some solution to this problem. Okay, how can we out Farage? No, we can't. Okay, then we better do something about immigration. What should we do? Let's say we were wrong. Wrong about what? Just wrong. Okay. Should we apologize? No, don't apologize. Say that we were sorry about what happened. You know, a sort of fake apology where somebody says, I'm sorry you were offended. Not, I'm sorry for the action that I took, or I'm sorry for the damage I've done. No. Just we'll say we're sorry that people were offended. Keep it that way. Sorry if we didn't deliver what we had promised. We shouldn't have promised things that we were not going to deliver. What are those things? It doesn't really matter what they are. Immigration, yeah, we should have promised to deliver on immigration. Deliver what? Stuff. It's like, oh God, they're pathetic. The Tories are absolutely pathetic. The row comes following analysis from the Office of National Statistics showing the UK's population is set to grow by 5 million people in 10 years, despite death rates being projected to overtake birth rates in the same time. In that time, all the forecast population growth is due to migration. But look, that's the reality of the situation. You know, of course, you're going if people are getting older and young people are having fewer children, well, then obviously the population is going to increase. The only way the population can increase is through immigration. Like the Tories keep saying what we need to do is train up our own. Okay, well then do you support increasing the minimum wage? No. Okay, do you support providing cheap and affordable housing? No. Do you support free childcare? No. Okay, then how do you want people to have children? Well, they just should, out of the common good. Okay, you know. And what were you saying about people who were having children and couldn't afford them in the past? Well, that they were terrible people. That's the Tory response. So the Tories, 20 or 30 years ago were saying, if you have children and you're not married, you're immoral. You deserve every punishment society can throw at you. Then it was, well, you're a sponge on the state. You shouldn't be having children if you can't afford them. That was the argument the Tories were making a few years ago. Now they seem to be saying, well, people need to have children. Why? Well, because we don't like immigrants. Do you support policies that would improve people's working conditions? No. It's like, give me something, throw me a bone, give me some incentive. You don't care about housing. You don't care about people's wages. You certainly don't care about people's conditions. You don't support people joining a trade union where they could, have collective bargaining and improve their lot. You don't support increasing benefits, which could help people out of poverty or avoid poverty. So they could be in a situation where they look around and say, well, maybe the time is right for me to have a kid. Maybe the situation economically is stable enough. The Tories support things like 0-hour contracts. They support forcing people to go into the office. They're arguing for everything that would be against their goal, which means that they don't really have this goal. It's just about pandering. It's just about a culture war. It's like, yeah, we care about the next generation. They don't give a flying fuck about the next generation. They never have. They never will. Anyway, Dane Patel, how did that ever happen? who served as Home Secretary from 2019 to 2022, appeared on The Sun's Never Mind the Ballots, I was about to say something else, earlier this week, where she was challenged about the fact immigration in the UK hit 1.2 million per year following the introduction of our system in 2021. Yeah, so I've covered that in a video where it was an interesting response from Priti Patel. She sort of doubled down on this idea, well, immigration is good. We have a points-based system. So if the numbers are up, well, that's the consequence. The reason the numbers are up, is, of course, is because freedom of movement ended. Excuse me. And it was a case of, well, we used to be able to rely on people from Europe who would come over, work for a few months maybe, or even for a few years. And then they would, well, you know, once a month or a couple of times a year, they would go back to their home to spend time with their family. They wouldn't generally bring their family with them. But that changed when people were coming from Asia, coming from Africa, coming from South America. Because of, you know, maybe cultural differences, but also, you know, if people don't want to spend huge amounts of time away from their family. So if they're earning enough money to have a reasonable existence in the UK, they'll probably want to bring their family with them. They don't want to see their child growing up without them. That's the reality of it. But nobody seems to want to talk about that. Certainly the politicians. Guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to cover just 2 more videos, of course, in regards to Donald Trump. This has to be done. Have a listen to this.
So we all know that Donald Trump has said he's obsessed with tariffs. But why is he obsessed with imposing tariffs on Mexico and Canada? After all...
Because he's insane. That's why, that's why he wants to do it. You can't rationalize Donald Trump.
There's the US, there's Mexico and Canada. If you think back to his first term, it was mostly China that he was talking about, wasn't it? It was the economic relationship with China. And actually, if you look at what happened with tariffs in that first term, and what's tariff? It's basically just a kind of block, like it's a...
I just want to respond to Gareth's super chat. Thanks so much, Gareth. Folk used to commute under freedom of movement, no? Yeah, like technically it was possible to commute. You know, if you were in Paris, you could take the train into London Central, the Eurostar. So yeah, people could commute. Probably wasn't a huge amount of it going on, but yes, under freedom of movement, it was, there was no restriction on people commuting.
Tax on goods coming into your country. It was China and Vietnam that had the biggest tariffs. The higher these are, the higher the tariffs are. And interestingly, Joe Biden kept those tariffs in place. Vietnam, by the way, because that's used sometimes as a conduit for goods coming from China. But Mexico and Canada, still very low tariffs, and that's because they're part of this free trade agreement in North America. But have a look at this, okay? This is showing you how much is imported from the main trade partners into the US. And this was the case back in 2018. So this is the first Trump administration. China is in the lead, then Mexico, then Canada. Then those tariffs came into play. And have a look at this. That red bar goes down. So less coming in from China, but considerably more coming in from Mexico, and more too coming in from Canada. And one of the things, to talk about that Mexico bar for a second, one of the things that Donald Trump really hates is deficits. When you're basically importing more than you're exporting to a country.
But why? Because he doesn't understand. He just thinks it's something negative. When in reality, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing.
And the deficit with Mexico has got bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And if you dig into the numbers, it's not just oil, it's goods, it's things like cars, precisely this kind of thing that the US would like.
Because the US has abandoned manufacturing. Because it's cheaper to produce these goods in Mexico.
Like to be making more of. So back to this chart, this map here, okay? So last time around, back in 2018, a lot of the trade from China was going directly into the US. Then those tariffs came into play. And now there's a suspicion that actually a lot of components, instead of going to the US, are going to Mexico and then being assembled into machinery and items and products that are going across the border. That's the suspicion here. And actually, if you look at how many cars are going from China into Mexico, that's been going up and up and up over time. Final thing, what kind of an impact would there be if those tariffs were to come in. Well, 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. You're talking about a big hit for Canada. The bars are basically showing you how much GDP would go down. A big hit for Mexico as well. But interestingly, look, it's less bad for the US, but it's still bad. And it's negative too, even for the EU and for the rest of the world, underlining something that economists like to point to. Tariffs don't make anyone that much better off.
But Trump doesn't care about making people better off. It's just about pandering to his base. Some people who had voted for Donald Trump are now regretting it, it seems.
Let's talk about what is a heartbreaking and also infuriating story out of Florida, because it really perfectly encapsulates the hypocrisy and the cruelty and the sheer lack of foresight that has really defined Trump's immigration policies, especially in their early days of these ICE raids. A Florida man, a Trump-supporting Florida man, is now pleading with Trump to, quote, work something out after ICE agents swooped in, detained his wife, and deported her back to Venezuela. This is a woman who was in the process of getting her papers in order, trying to do everything the right way, as they say, but it didn't matter. She's gone. Her husband is begging, please let my wife stay here. She deserves to be here. So let's check out this video and then talk about it.
They turned off the cameras, excuse my language, and then they took my wife.
This man, who wished not to be identified, says his wife is from Venezuela and has lived in the United States for a few years. She was one of 3 people taken from this home. I'm told the 2 others were men who worked in construction. You see them here. This video, only 1 minute and 52 seconds long, we do not see his wife being removed from the home. But this is a picture of her that he keeps in his wallet. Her name is Vianis Ramirez, and he says she was in the process of becoming a United States citizen.
She already had a court date. She was good. Everything was good. He just came in and snatched her.
These are pictures from the Department of Homeland Security detaining other undocumented men and women in Broward County.
It's despicable what they're doing right now.
sorry, but oh my goodness, you know, should we have sympathy for this man? As Brad says, thanks so much, Brad. I never thought Trump would deport my wife, says the man who voted for Trump, for the Trump will deport my wife party. You know, look, I feel sorry for the victim here, the wife, but you vote. What is it wrong? What is it? Trump supporters are so stupid that they're still going on saying, yeah, I actually voted for Donald Trump, as opposed to saying, you know, like, if you're in a situation like this where people will just look at you and say you're stupid, wouldn't it be clever to say stuff like, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, I voted for Joe Biden, yeah, or no, not Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. I voted for Kamala Harris. Don't look at my Facebook page. It's pathetic. You know, this is what you wanted. You voted for a guy who said he's going to clamp down on immigration. He's going to kick people out. He's going to deport as many as possible. Donald Trump is talking about putting people in Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay has, I believe, a maximum capacity of 800. Donald Trump is planning to send, look, we're talking about Donald Trump here, so it could be anything, could mean anything. He's talking about sending 30,000 to a prison that holds 700 or 800 people. Garrett, thanks so much for that super chat. F you and you're effing your wife. Thanks so much, Garrett. Yes. Like, what is wrong with these people? Like, you got exactly what you voted for. This sounds, you know, there's a parallel, I think, between Trump supporters who are seeing their family members deported or seeing themselves deported, and the DUP. They remind me of the DUP. The DUP, like, who are still like, yeah, I still support Brexit, even though it's damaging the union. Even though people told me it could damage the union, I just ignore that because I hate Ireland and the EU more than I love the union. And these people are like, I hate I hate fellow immigrants, or I hate my wife more than I How was it? Then I love Donald Trump.
Very embarrassing.
President Donald Trump arrived at his Trump National Golf Resort in Doral Saturday, set to host GOP leaders for a conference. This man hopes this message makes it to him.
Sorry. You actually think that Donald Trump is going to see this message, if he does, and he's going to go, actually, we better take a step back, guys. You know, we ramped up all this rhetoric about deporting people, but some guy, I don't remember his name, his wife got deported, so that's just terrible. So let's stop everything and let's roll back this policy. Yeah, like that's going to happen. My wife is a Venezuelan. Right. Look, maybe I shouldn't be laughing. Look, my sympathy is for the individual who's been deported, not for the guy. The guy voted for this. He wanted this. He was told, you're going to vote for somebody. Donald Trump told people, I'm going to deport all these so-called illegal migrants. What did you expect was going to happen? The camp is in Cuba. Yeah, but it's U.S. territory. The camp will need constant watching for human rights abuses. That's not going to happen, though. Max, what party does your wife vote for? Well said, Peter. We actually voted for the Green Party here, but didn't do very well. I can't laugh about this because this man's mind has been poisoned by Trump and right-wingers, and he now suffers as a result. You're right, Reagan elite. But there's so many people. Is he going to wake up from this? Now that it has impacted him, is he going to vote for the Democrats next time? Is he going to vote against the Republicans? Or is he just going to, I've been a Republican all my life. Are these people too far gone? Is it so bad? Is this guy's mind so poisoned that he's still a Trump supporter? Watch the Vance fella, Baden. Yes, certainly. Yeah, if Trump goes, JD Vance is potentially worse. It's always possibly worse. That's the worst thing about this. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Greatly appreciated. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. Don't go yet. We have our final video for the night, comedy show. Hope you enjoy it. It's an old one, but it's still a good one. It's an old code, sir, but it does check out. Hope you enjoy this. And hope you all have a wonderful weekend. So let's jump into this.
You'll benefit from an NHS run almost completely into the ground, thanks to the reallocation of funds from the EU budget to hedge fund managers, conservative cronies, and disaster capitalists. Controlled immigration will lead to fruit rotting on the trees, the needless slaughter of tens of thousands of healthy pigs, and increased hospital waiting times for you and your loved ones, as all the crucial workers from overseas will have buggered off. Excess funding that would otherwise be sent to Brussels could also be directed to education, but won't be. We'll increase tensions with Northern Ireland, meaning a return to the glorious Britain of the 1970s. Your wages will not rise, but the price of everything else will. And a reintroduction of roaming charges will give massive mobile phone firms a much-needed economic boost. New passports will be more blue, and you'll be able to admire them for longer in extended airport queues. You and your family will benefit from an economy in recession, led by flourishing small businesses, of which only 4 are left. Don't worry, you'll still be able to buy and sell goods in the EU, but with the added benefits of significant customs charges, hilarious amounts of paperwork, and ridiculous shipping delays. Food prices will no longer be inflated by EU agricultural policies. We'll find our own British way to inflate them. And following the removal of burdensome EU regulations and red tape, we'll be able to poison our own food with pesticides and flood our historic coastlines with shit and piss. Our newfound economic freedoms mean we'll probably have to ramp up interest rates, destroying the housing dreams of young people. Politicians, both local and national, will be less accountable, dictated to by a small but inexplicably powerful group of MPs. And, thanks to an archaic parliamentary system, you'll have no power to get rid of them. Our farming, fishing and steel industries are struggling, deprived communities are falling apart, and children are being pushed into poverty. But let's say the European Union did all of that. A more prosperous and safer future awaits us outside the EU. A vote to leave is a vote for a brighter future for traitors, grifters, and bastards.
Well said, well said. So guys, have a great weekend. Stay safe, take care, and good night.